Hello and welcome to LoreDive, where we look into the lore of all of our favorite video games. In this episode, we're going to go through and look into the first batch of creations developed by the Progenitor and T-Virus, and see just what kind of creations were developed by, or were caused by, Umbrella Pharmaceuticals. Zombie T-Type. The zombie T-Type is a result of what happens when most humans succumb to T-Virus infection. The name zombie was primarily taken from Haitian folklore, where necromancers would reanimate recently dead individuals as a form of slave labor. Due to the necrosis caused by T-Virus infection, the lack of strong pulse, and lack of higher brain function, many people similarly confuse zombies as being reanimated corpses. How infection is brought on can vary, but usually occurs when the infected come into contact with a contaminated water supply, or by receiving a direct bite or scratch from an infected individual. Despite the name, zombies are not actually dead, as their body does continue to function, albeit in a defunct state, with blood still coursing through their veins and their organs working on a lower level than normal. As such, their bodies can be damaged to the point where they cease to function. This is why, though ineffective, shooting a zombie enough times will cause them to die, though they can end up in a dormant state, which can lead to further mutation. Due to this, the only way to truly ensure a zombie's death is to completely immolate the body, or damage their brain to the point where they can no longer function, or in other words, shoot them in the head. Note, it is worth mentioning that while it is highly likely that the T-Virus will be spread through a bite or a scratch, it is not a 100% guarantee. Not including individuals who are immune to T-Virus infection, there is still a chance that if someone is bitten, that they will not contract the virus. In order for a person to become a zombie, they must be infected before their brain ceases to function. If someone dies and their brain is no longer active, their body will not be able to reanimate as a T-Virus zombie. It is possible for someone to be infected immediately after their death, but there is a low likelihood of reanimation. And the reanimated dead tend to be less physically able than a live infected test subject. Progenitor leech. Progenitor leeches are unique leeches created in 1978 by Dr. James Marcus by combining the progenitor virus with leech DNA. This would, in turn, eventually lead Marcus to creating the T-Virus. The mutation that leeches go through when exposed to the progenitor virus is very different than when they are infected with the T-Virus, however. The progenitor virus causes the leech to grow to much larger sizes than that of an ordinary leech, and to increase the power of its teeth to the point where it can bite through glass. Mimicry Marcus. The most unique characteristic of Marcus's leeches was their ability to learn from their experiences and work together to overcome them, eventually functioning effectively as a single creature. It was at this point that they gained the ability to shape themselves into a rough humanoid form, seemingly out of a desire to imitate their beloved creator. These creatures, which retain their shape due to a mucus fluid that coats the external leeches in order to provide rigidity, are known as a Mimicry Marcus. Cerberus. Using the modernized naming convention for the mythological three-headed dog that guards the underworld in Greek mythology, the Cerberus project began in the early 1980s as a beta strain of the T-Virus was being developed. It was hoped that the improved T-Virus strain would create mutants more adequate for sale as military products, and Dobermans were specifically selected for the project due to their traits favoring military service. Though they suffered skin deterioration, their muscles were left largely intact. This and their increased strength and aggression made them more dangerous. Deemed a success, later Cerberus were created by cloning one of the prototypes. The Arklay laboratory conducted testing on these dogs in the courtyard until the T-Virus outbreak in 1998, when they escaped. Hungry and lacking their umbrella trainers, they turned feral and began killing and eating hikers out in the Arklay Mountains. Members of this pack fought with stars, but it is unknown how many escaped during the mansion incident. Stinger. The Stinger was created by Umbrella as part of their research into arachnid-based bioweaponry. The T-Virus mutated the Scorpion, causing it to grow to a tremendous size, and for the majority of its skin to be heavily armored. Unfortunately, this mutation did not extend to the stinger's head, which retained a thinner layer of armor that could be easily pierced. Due to this blatant flaw, the stinger was considered a failure, and only one was ever created. Plague crawlers. The plague crawler is a unique B.O.W. species created through using the T virus for purposes of deliberate genetic modification. In regards to this particular species, its origins lie in the merging of DNA from multiple insect species using the T virus as a sort of bonding agent. While the plague crawler species proved that viable bioweapons could be created through the virus, they were regarded by Marcus as a failure due to their lack of intelligence and control, which made them impractical for military use. Marcus made preparations for the entire species to be destroyed as waste at the Umbrella Executive Training Center, though some plague crawlers managed to escape destruction and survived in the complex until 1998. Dark, wet areas are the plague crawlers' preferred habitat, many of them inhabiting various areas in the upper levels of the Umbrella Research Center. Crows. After the T-virus leak, many crows became infected with the T-virus after consuming smaller infected animals. Unlike other animals infected by the virus, crows showed no visible signs of infection aside from their increased size. If threatened, however, they would attack their prey in a flock, but otherwise they were harmless. It was, however, through the crows that STAR's Bravo team member Forrest Spire became infected with the T-virus, most likely seeing him as a threat. Infected crows would appear again after Raccoon City had been completely infected by the T-virus. These crows were noticeably more aggressive than the ones found at the Arklay laboratory, in part due to them being attacked by the UBCS, who attacked any infected individuals that they saw. A single crow managed to bring down Ed, a trained UBCS mercenary. The Centurion. Centurion, as with other arthropods, experienced unusual size growth as a result of T-virus infection stimulating excessive hormone production. While large centipede species may grow as long as 30 centimeters, the Centurion reached a length of approximately 10 meters. Its prey naturally changed to include much larger animals than insects, and in July of 1998 attempted to eat STAR's officer Rebecca Chambers, but never got the opportunity as it was put down by ex-Lieutenant Billy Cohen. Eliminator. The Eliminator was one of several early prototype weapons developed exclusively by James Marcus to test the T-virus's capabilities as a weapon, but before the selection of a specific host for the strain. Although initially deemed a successful product, the Eliminator was found to have undergone a significant decline in overall intelligence as a result of T-virus administration, which was supposed to be its greatest asset to Umbrella's B.O.W. program. Mass production of the Eliminator was cancelled, and only a handful of specimens were preserved for further testing and general research. Giant Spiders. The Giant Spider was a B.O.W. created by Dr. James Marcus during his early trials with the T-virus. Though nearly identical to another series of B.O.W.s known as web spinners, the Giant Spider and Web Spinner were created independently, as the Giant Spiders were created from accidental exposure, while the Web Spinners were created from intentional infection. The Giant Spiders are, as their name implies, giant arachnids that grew to immense size due to T-virus exposure. The spiders were found to be intriguing specimens, but for the most part were not seen as being viable as bioweapons due to their relatively low constitution. Hunter. Alpha Series. Hunters are a group of human-animal hybrids which were genetically engineered as biological weapons. Hunter species are created through the grafting of reptilian donor DNA to a fertilized human embryo with the aid of the T-virus as a bonding agent. The Hunters were one of Umbrella's more successful products, and amongst their oldest, having entered production with the Hunter Alpha in the 1980s. Hunter Alpha clones possess intelligence equivalent to orangutans, allowing them to follow a number of simple commands. They also developed a degree of social interaction, managing to communicate to a limited extent. The Alpha models are extremely fast, capable of chasing down and eviscerating prey. The Alpha series found at the training facility were used primarily to train the Umbrella Security Service, and based on the skeletal remains, were successful at weeding out soldiers that couldn't make the cut. Infected bats. Similar to crows, infected bats don't usually change much from their base version and are mostly harmless, but can become problematic when they are in a larger group. This can be remedied though due to their aversion to light, and keeping a torch or lighter with you will reduce your likelihood of being attacked. The giant infected bat here is a rare mutation within bats that have been infected with the T virus. The main distinction is their enlarged size and increased strength. Though it was a dangerous adversary, either Rebecca Chambers or Billy Cohen managed to defeat it before proceeding to the laboratory underneath the chapel. Prototyrant, Type 001. The T-001 was created by the Arclay Laboratories Tyrant project team as part of their research into creating intelligent human bioweapons for military use. Due to what was determined to be an overdose of T-virus during the initial infection, the test subject suffered from a number of unforeseen adverse effects, including a defective nervous system, reduced intelligence, and an exposed spinal column due to significant necrosis of tissue, which made it vulnerable to small arms fire. The heart was also pushed out of the body and made exposed. Despite these setbacks, the T-001 showed some promise as a bioweapon prototype, with it displaying superhuman strength, and the Tyrant project continued its research, although the T-001 itself was deemed a failure, and it was placed in storage at Nest awaiting disposal. When the Queen Leech attacked on the 24th of July, it was one of the many creatures that were released, wandering around the facility before coming across Rebecca Chambers. Lurkers. Lurkers were a species of frog created in the early years of T-virus research as part of a study in the effects of mutation on amphibians and their suitability as bioweapons. Created by Dr. James Marcus, the failures in the lurker indicated that amphibian-based bioweapons were impractical with the T-virus strains available at the time. The lurkers behaved largely the same as other frog species, with the most striking difference being the excessive hormone production which gave them a great size. Lurkers were large enough to be able to swallow a human whole, and their powerful tongues made them formidable predators. Due to the primitive brains of amphibians, the lurker test subjects could not be controlled and were therefore unsuitable as bioweapons and a hazard to the staff. A second flaw in the lurkers was the loss of vision, though their newly empty eye sockets became useful as a second pair of ears. The lurker were also known to be somewhat cowardly, and would run away if they felt they were in danger. They were quickly dismissed as a possible bioweapon, but their creation went on to eventually create the slightly more well-received Hunter Gamma. Queen Leech, Progenitor virus variation. The Queen Leech was engineered as Dr. James Marcus's greatest achievement, and its biology differed radically from that of natural leeches. Like natural leeches, the Queen Leech was a hermaphrodite, though unlike natural leeches, it was capable of self-fertilization, which is how it was able to create enough offspring to attack the train and Umbrella soldiers. The Queen Leech possessed a sophisticated olfactory organ, which allowed it to communicate with offspring via smell. But a damp or humid environment was required for the Queen Leech to thrive, limiting its ability to leave certain areas for long periods of time. In a form of mimicry, far beyond that of the other leeches, the Queen Leech was able to shape its whole body to mimic that of Dr. Marcus, becoming shorter and gaining arms and legs. As a personal choice, it took the form of Dr. Marcus's younger self, rather than the elderly figure that created it. On a scale of intelligence, the Queen Leech far surpassed that of other B.O.Ws, and was likely as intelligent as an above-average human. In May of 1998, the Queen Leech finally acted on its plan to avenge Marcus's death. Over the next few weeks, it manipulated an accident at the Arclay laboratory, leading to the entire facility's staff being infected with the Epsilon strain of the T-virus, while their B.O.Ws escaped into the forest. Umbrella's investigation teams sent to evaluate the training school and laboratory for recommissioning were attacked and infected by leeches, as were the entire complement of a passenger train transporting Umbrella staff through the Arclays. The Queen Leech's goal was to create a devastating viral outbreak that would ultimately spread across the world. Adder. A number of adders native to Raccoon Forest and living in and around the grounds of the Arklay Laboratory were infected with the Epsilon strain after eating mutant animals. Most did not exhibit major mutations apart from a more potent venom, though the yawn exhibited rapid production of growth hormones. The normal-sized adders continued to live and hunt in the trees that they had done before, dropping on warm-blooded animals. They did, however, experience an increase in the potency of their hemorrhagic venom. Their increased aggression towards non-prey was coupled with the risk of T-virus infection and snake bites. They also became abnormally fertile. Yawn. Yawn suffered mutations atypical of other adders, having grown rapidly to 40 meters in length due to excess hormone production. It possessed amphibian characteristics, with mucus secretions covering the skin to aid in injury recovery rather than having dry, rough skin. The size of Yawn's mouth and its esophagus made it easily capable of swallowing a human whole. The most noticeable aspect of its T-virus infection was its enormous length and girth. It also proved to retain its predator intellect, easily able to stalk and attack its prey before they even realized it. However, the yawn exhibited examples of uncoordinated mutations, as its size became greatly inconsistent with its length, and its body became covered with various sores and tumors. The potency of its venom was also significantly enhanced, requiring a specially formulated serum to counteract it. Its venom could quickly immobilize a human within minutes, and would kill the victim shortly afterwards, if left untreated. The Crimson Head. The Crimson Head is one possible mutation a zombie can experience, depending on the strain of T-virus it is infected with. The V-Act process is responsible for its crimson skin, earning it its name. When the V-Act process occurs within a zombie, the heart begins pumping at an alarming rate, causing noticeable blood seepage in the skin and giving it its crimson shade, while the eyes become white and glowing. The subject's fingers and toes develop sharp claws and an increased muscle mass and movement speed. The subject's level of aggression also increases exponentially from that of a typical zombie, and its previous moans become loud, hoarse roars. When zombies mutate into Crimson Heads, virtually nothing will stop them from pursuing their prey, and they will sometimes slash through other zombies standing between them and whatever they are hunting. As a result, these creatures are extremely dangerous. Web spinners. Like the giant spider, web spinners were a series of spider-based bioorganic weapons developed by Umbrella USA. Though they had functional spinning glands, despite their name, they rarely made webs with their silk. The web spinner was intended to be deployed into war zone and to use its venom to injure combatants before eating them. The limited intelligence and less than hoped-for strength increase made the series non-viable, and they were largely discontinued. The body of web spinners was known to be poisonous, and was used for both defense and offense. Their fangs could inject a potent venom into a human body that could kill within minutes, but it could also spit venom from a short distance. The web spinner's abdomen was also poisonous, and could spray onto enemies if ruptured during a fight. Unlike many other animals infected with the T-virus, web spinners are known to have reproduced in some fashion, and typically carried their young on their backs, providing a posthumous method of defense if a web spinner's carcass was approached. Neptune. Neptune was a subspecies of great white shark developed by Umbrella as bioweaponry. The Neptune benefited little from its T-virus infection, being largely comparable to its uninfected counterparts, albeit more aggressive and capable of surviving in shallow waters. The Neptune's attack instinct was also similar to uninfected sharks, being to sense prey by smell, and attacking by biting down on the prey and dragging them underwater to drown. There was also one instance of a Neptune growing to an immense size, but this was deemed to be abnormal, and could not be counted on as a common infection. Plant 42. Plant 42 was created by Henry Sarton, who injected a plant living in Point 42 with a T-virus out of curiosity. Plant 42 proved to be completely unique, incomparable to any other plant-based test subjects. Its roots burrowed deep through the wood and concrete into the residence and began feeding on the chemical-rich water of the aquarine, likely promoting further growth. Expanding its vines across the building, it used cracks in the floor to attack passing members of staff, feeding on their blood. By May 21st, Plant 42 had completely taken over a room of the dormitory. Able to manipulate doorknobs and move its vines, Plant 42 captured and drained several researchers of their blood when they tried to destroy it. It was discovered by Sarton's team that Plant 42 was sensitive to a chemical known as UMB number 20, also known as V-Jolt. A plan was devised to destroy it, involving feeding it directly to its roots. However, this plan could not be accomplished either due to the continued deterioration of the researchers' health from T-virus infection, or because of the escaped Neptunes in the flooded aquatank chamber. Chimera. Chimera was a bioweapon product developed by the Umbrella Corporation, manufactured in the Arclay laboratory sometime before May of 1998. It was a human-fly hybrid named after a monster of Greek mythology, itself a combination of different animals. Umbrella began using their newly developed T-virus strains on animals soon after their founding. However, they were met with problems with their practicality, such as a lack of intelligence, or insufficient strength increases which eliminated the web spinner as a reliable weapon. In its place, the Chimera project was started, which intended to graft insect DNA into human embryos. Homeless women were abducted by Umbrella agents and forcibly impregnated with the modified embryos. Out of various insect-human hybrids that were envisioned as bioweapons, it was a fly-human hybrid that was chosen for continued study. It was subsequently cloned to produce identical bioweapons. Due to their many flaws, further research into more advanced forms were never conducted, and the Chimera's basic form was never refined to the lengths of the Hunter or the Tyrant. Chimera possess powerful limbs ending with sharp claws. With these, they are able to hook themselves onto ceiling protrusions such as grates and pipes. This allows them to hunt prey from above, outside their plane of vision, with their thin bodies also fitting through air ducts. They are in fact stronger than the Hunter Alpha, also created by Dr. Birkin's team in the early 1980s, though their intelligence was considerably lower and made them a poor choice of a weapon. Further observed traits of the Chimera are that they are incapable of flight and that their bodies dissolve upon death. They also appear to be asexual, as they grow maggots on their bodies. The Tyrant T-002 model. The T-002 was the first successful development of the Tyrant project, an Umbrella USA R&D project that sought to create enhanced human bioweapons, intelligent and strong enough to fully replace soldiers on the front lines. The project was stalled for years due to the rarity of a certain gene for intelligence, which allowed infected humans to mutate differently from zombies. Such individuals were themselves likely to die during the mutation, rendering Tyrants impractical to create at the time. During the 1990s, the Tyrant project staff carried out research on an improved strain, dubbed Epsilon, and were able to advance the project to the next stage. Several convicts with beneficial genetic traits were located by Umbrella and brought over to the lab to take part in the project. Due to the severity of the mutations, most of the participants perished. Upon completion, the T-002 was planned to be set up against combat veterans in a live fire exercise before clones were mass-produced. Development of the T-002, however, was never formally concluded. During a procedure in May of 1998, the interference of the Queen Leech allowed the T-002 an opportunity to release Epsilon as an airborne pathogen, infecting a number of researchers. Consequently, no written report was completed, and the B.O.W. itself received no new bodily improvements following the addition of its altered cardiovascular system. Cloned embryos of the T-002 were successfully evacuated by Dr. Albert Wesker during a visit, but the Tyrant itself was not evacuated when the quarantine was raised. This makes it the first, and only, successful model of the T-002 Tyrant, which all other Tyrant models were based upon. That's going to be it for this episode of LoreDive. I thank you all for your patience, as I know that the schedule's been a little bit slower than usual, but things should be picking up quite soon. A special thanks to Jack Freeman and JTC, my newest Patreon supporter. If you'd like to help support the creation of these videos, as well as get a few extra goodies along the way, including seeing certain videos early, you can do so by following the links down below. Also down there is the link to my Twitch channel if you ever want to come by and just chill out while we play some games. We will be continuing along with Resident Evil as well as Dead by Daylight in the future, but it is now time to start on a brand new project. It's a project that I've had in the works for quite a while, and now it's finally time to get it off the ground. So let me give you a quick preview of what's to come. In the year 2148, explorers on Mars discovered the remains of an ancient spacefaring civilization. In the decades that followed, these mysterious artifacts revealed startling new technologies, enabling travel to the farthest stars. The basis for this incredible technology was a force that controlled the very fabric of space and time. They called it the greatest discovery in human history. The civilizations of the galaxy call it